further analysis, we're joined from Washington by founder and chairman of Lynx Advisory, Peter Tanous. A very warm welcome to Qnews Economic Bulletin, sir. And it's always a pleasure to have you with us. Sir, how do you assess or see from your own narrative the tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump is, of course, mentioning or wants to put on India in case India purchases Russian oil? How do you read this, sir? That's threatening, or the narrative?
Nice to be with you again, Rana.
Thank you so much.
I think that's problematic, frankly. It's one thing to have bilateral trade negotiations country to country. When you introduce secondary sanctions, in this case, the United States is not happy with India's buying oil from Russia, it becomes much more complicated because you're asking your trading partner to do something beyond what you want them to do in trade with yourself. This will be much more difficult to resolve than simple bilateral trade negotiations. So we're just going to have to see how it plays out.
Okay, sir, what are your expectations, how it's going to play out, or you're not yet sure, or it's not yet clear?
There's going to have to be a compromise. I don't think Trump will necessarily win this one outright. The compromise could take the form of India agreeing to buy less oil from Russia. I don't think it's likely that they will succumb and agree not to buy any oil from Russia. Already the tariff deal with India is quite high, and India may suffer as a result. But I think Modi is going to hold his own on this, and the best we can hope for is a compromise on both sides.
Sir, could Trump's public criticism of India's oil trade impact broader U.S.-India economic relations or trade agreements?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Yes, it was quick, I know, sir. Sorry. Could Trump's public criticism of India's oil trade impact broader U.S.-India economic relations or trade agreements?
Yeah, sure, it could, because the U.S. has the upper hand. We're the most important trading partner for most other countries, and Trump is playing that card pretty well. So it obviously will have an impact, but it puts Modi in a very difficult situation when you get into these secondary sanctions where the United States is telling a trading partner, this is not about what we do together, it's about you do with somebody else, and we want you to stop that. So that puts them politically in a very difficult position. But as I've said before on air, if you want a clue as to how all the trade issues are working out, just look at the U.S. stock market. The stock market continues to operate at a very high level. If that changes and the market starts to go down dramatically, it will be a signal that the trade issue is not going well at all. But that's not happening now.
Trade issue in the United States or all over the world, sir?
All over the world.
In
other words,
okay,
how are the trade negotiations with the world going? So far, it appears that Trump is winning most of them. And the U.S. stock market is reflecting that because it is near an all-time high, and it is up again today. So this is where you want to look for a clue, if you want a good clue as to what's happening and how the world is viewing these complicated trade negotiations with the United States.
Thank you for adding this piece of information, sir. Sir, what are the potential consequences of escalating trade tensions between the United States and India for global supply chains?
Yeah, India is not one of our most important trading partners. We run about a $40 billion deficit in trade with India, which is not inconsequential, but it's also not the greatest one. I mean, India exports to the United States some electronics, jewelry, some textiles, things we frankly can do without if we absolutely need to. So the United States has somewhat of an upper hand in these trade negotiations. But as I mentioned before, secondary sanctions are problematic because you're putting your trading partner in a very bad position. So I wish I could predict how this is going to work out. My best prediction is that it'll end in a compromise where both sides have to give a little.
Okay, sir. If from your own point of view and perspective and narrative that the United States has the upper hand, then why is Donald Trump bothered to start with?
Sorry, so repeat the last part. Why is Donald
Why
Trump?
is Donald Trump bothered?
Sorry, I didn't get that, Rana.
Why is he bothered? Bothered by the entire
Oh yeah, bother. He's bothered by because he's bothered by lots of things. If you haven't noticed that before,
but he
uh,
doesn't need to add to his agenda bothering himself with things when he knows that he is winning these deals or these agreements. So why get into very small details?
now, for example, he has won the trade agreements with most of the other trading partners. Most recently with the EU. The India situation, and I think you correctly reported this earlier in the broadcast, has to do with the fact that he wants Russia to stop the war with Ukraine. And the India is enabling Russia by buying Russian oil, which obviously puts money in Russia's coffers. That is what Trump is upset with India about, and I think you accurately reported that. And that is why he is picking on India for higher tariffs and making life difficult for them because he wants Russia to be under pressure, not to stop the Iran war. So he's imposing direct and indirect sanctions on Russia in the hope that that will get them to a negotiating table where they can stop the war in Ukraine. Now, let me add this, though. It is also important to realize that Putin cannot stop the war in Ukraine and come up empty handed. He has lost 250,000 young men died in this war so far, billions of dollars of expenses on this war. So he can't come up empty-handed. He's got to win something, and that is where the problem lies today.
Okay,
And
sir. Moving on to the EU-US trade negotiations. How might the EU's decision to suspend countermeasures to the United States tariffs to US tariffs influence future transatlantic trade policy?
yeah, well, the handshake a few days ago, as you know, set tariffs at 15% with certain exemptions. The main imports to the United States from the EU are cars, pharmaceuticals, some electronics. The those are in place now, but unfortunately, as you point out, many of the details in these negotiations have not been resolved, and that is what is going to happen in the near future. I'm pretty optimistic that this is not going to be a major problem.
Sir, what unresolved issues, such as tariffs on spirits and car parts, still pose risks to the EU-US trade relationship?
Well, I don't think this is going to be a major issue. Cars are a major import from the EU to the United States, particularly, of course, from Germany. but that is going to be subject to the 15% import duty. So European cars, German cars are going to cost more in the United States. But keep in mind that one of the issues about tariffs that is very important for the US is raising revenue. It's not just about trade. Trump wants to raise hundreds of billions of dollars to help close our budget deficit, which is starting to be a big problem worldwide.
Sir, could recent developments trigger a shift in alliances or trade blocs, especially involving India, the United States, and the EU?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, the uh, the big controversy or the big trade issue, the giants in the trade issue are China and the United States. So the thing we have to be careful about is that some of these trade issues, if not resolved well, might shift some of our traditional partners more into the China orb, which would be undesirable for the US. But so far, that hasn't happened. And the US trade negotiators obviously should, will be very conscious of that happening in an effort to resolve any of our trade issues that become complicated.
From Washington, that was founder and chairman of Lynx Advisory, Peter Tanous. Can't thank you enough, sir, for your intellectual and informative, of course, and valuable insights. Thank you very much for joining us in Q News Economic Bulletin today.